GameWorn Radio is on the air.
Hey! Shelton scores! Up in the Cordova, baby! We're going bowling. Now, let's go hunt moose on a Harley. The fires, he scores! L.A. face with an Oakland booty. Scores! Make me a bicycle club. They score! Bowmeister paid that man his money.
GameWorn Radio.
Hey everybody, it's Derek with GameWorn Radio. We're part of GameWorn.us. I'm joined tonight with a few special people, a couple guys you've heard already before. I'm going to go ahead and let you know who we've got on. Joining us again today is going to be Jason. We got Marco back, Paul's back, and some of our new guys are going to be Derek Christensen, Burt Woods, Eric Turnrose, and Dan Day. So, Derek, do you want to introduce yourself for everybody who's listening?
Yeah, I'd love to. Glad to be here. So, my name is Derek Christensen. I live in Chicago, and my main focus is really Western Michigan University jerseys, along with alumni of their pro jerseys. And being in Chicago, I will collect a Blackhawks jersey here and there, but it's mainly WMU based.
Very good. All right, next up we've got Dan Day. Dan?
Hey, what's going on? I collected football for over 20 years. Started selling that stuff to collect hockey for the last 5 years. Main focus is Penguins and a few Michigan players like Red Wings or guys that from Michigan that went on to either the pros or AHL.
Great, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks.
Next up we got Burt Woods. Burt, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Burt Woods. I'm out of Delaware on the East Coast. I'm originally from the D.C. area. I've been collecting 15, 20 years or so. And I do mostly caps and knuckle draggers, as we'll say. So, the fighting contingent. Very
good, very good. And finally, our last new guy is going to be Eric Turnrose.
Hi there. From the Rockford area outside of Chicago. Collect mostly Blackhawks goalie stuff. Besides that, Ice Hug goalie stuff as well. And being a goalie myself, I've been to many the pros and the Hawks, so that's kind of where it started. And my pro was actually one of my thrift store for $1. So that's kind of started where from there, and it's gone downhill since.
Awesome. Well, I'm really glad to have so many people calling in today. It should make for a very interesting show. As you guys already know, our topic is auctions, and that's a pretty broad topic, so we're just going to see where it leads us. Marco, I believe we're going to give you the floor first.
Sounds good. So, I think like most collectors, especially people on the forums, have had, encounters with auction houses, their own, success stories and problems with them. So I guess we'll start off the top by covering, the pros and the cons of going through an auction house. The first one that stands out to me is, when you're buying through an auction house, I'm from Canada, you guys are from the States, so it's not an issue for you, but when you have to convert to American dollar and exchange rates, and you couple that with the auction house fees, they have a 20% buyer's fee, 20% seller's fee. Do people think those are reasonable fees to charge for the service that is provided through the auction house?
Personally, I don't like the really high consignment rates. I'm not exactly sure what it is to consign, but that 20% hammer really prevents me from participating in auctions in general.
Jay, what do you think, man? You ever buy from auction houses?
I have not. I've looked at several, and most of the jerseys I'm looking at are lower end ones, and it's a lot of that makes my decision easy, is I don't want to have to pay all that extra for a jersey I'm not picking up for a whole lot of money to begin with.
Now, it's 20%. There's got to be some kind of value behind, what they're charging, or else the auction houses wouldn't have the kind of success they have currently, and they're currently very successful. For me, part of the value is in authenticity. Do you guys feel any more comfortable about buying an item through an auction house, or is it quite the opposite? Maybe you prefer to buy, just straight through collectors, just from an authenticity point of view.
For me, so a lot of the stuff I've been reading and seeing, just with authenticity from some of the auction houses, it really doesn't sit easy with me. If you take a look at some of the letters that get sent out with the items, it's just a copy of the listing. It doesn't say we authenticated this or anything like that. And I've seen instances or read of instances in which they don't even include original letters that were distributed with the jersey. So it's a really sketchy situation. For me, it's something I try to stay away from a little bit. I think it could be done better, but that's me.
You touch on an interesting point. So we'll try not to name names here, but there is an auction house right now that has a Curtis Joseph mask that is highly debatable whether it's authentic or not. It's been going around various forums. People are discussing where the mask came from, the authenticity of the mask, what the auction house is doing about it. Basically, from the community's point of view, it is a doctored mask. Some old forum member owned it at one point, got it, tried to photo match it, couldn't photo match it, saw that it was kind of wrong for the era, sent it back. The mask was altered to look like it was from the era that it was represented being from, and then subsequently sold again. So authenticity, yeah, I mean, even though you're selling through an auction house, I guess the prevailing statement is that you still have to do your homework, which is really, really sad, because I do think that's what that's part of the hammer for you. That's part of the value you should be getting out of the auction house. You guys have any other instances of fake shit you've seen go through auction houses?
I think I can chime in a little bit here because I've pretty much bought and consigned through every major auction that's out there. And one thing about the fees, going back to that discussion, that's pretty much a norm for every auction house and sports memorabilia. Even Leland's and all these ones that don't get too much into hockey, all the sports memorabilia have some kind of hammer fee. So that's kind of par for the course. The nice thing about Facebook and eBay is really the fees are non-existent. Even if you consign through something like MyGray, they do have a fee on you as well. The consignment rates, they differ, but for the most part, they're anywhere between 10% and somewhere in that ballpark. So it really depends. The thing that an auction house always brought to me as a consigner is that it was a lot of less hassle, if you will, okay, and that you could get premium dollar for your item and not have to deal with eBay and a lot of the tire kicker situations that you get off some online forums. So if you have a vintage shirt, you'll get prime dollar for it. Now, the modern shirt is going to get nowhere near probably what you paid for it or what you think it's worth. So really, auction houses are good for vintage stuff and really vintage acquisition. I've always used it as to get consignment money to get some of these larger pieces that I'm not necessarily willing to throw a couple grand at off Facebook or off a forum. Or as an auction house, there is at least another set of eyes looking at the jersey. Now, it doesn't mean everything is going to be legit, and that's why you have to do your homework and do a little bit of research and maybe poke around of things that have been posted elsewhere. But people want jerseys, and they don't want to get the modern kind of nowhere type jersey. Then that's really a lot of the route you're going to have to go, because you're not going to find a lot of vintage just floating around on some of the forums.
See, one of the things I would have an issue with when selling through an auction house is, and I believe a lot of them don't let you set reserves, which is really scary. You're throwing a lot of stuff up there, right? Maybe $10,000 or $20,000 worth of stuff, in your opinion, that you paid for it. to not know what it's going to go for. Could go for less, could go for more. It's very, very scary proposition. Have you personally had success selling through auction house, or is it more?
I personally have, and I do know that in the auction about a year ago that Classic had with all the old Bruin stuff, there was reserves on that. But I think,
Yeah, I saw that one. That
Yeah.
usually they don't do that though, and I think that they probably had to make an exception because that guy
Yeah,
just had such a tremendous collection.
yeah, I actually consigned about 52 about 3 years ago. I was in the process of a divorce, so I consigned it just to settle out a little bit of money, and really, yeah, of course, you're sweating every second on the auction. So,
So you had
but no,
52 shirts you consigned?
I consigned 52. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. So some were real high end, some were really low end, and really, and another thing, if you try to put 52 shirts on eBay, you're going to get nowhere near, and plus you're going to get 1099 stuff if you want to get into that route. Where an auction house oftentimes will get you around that a little bit. You know, if you know what a 1099 is, the tax issue that you would get through PayPal.
yes,
So,
yes, yes.
so yeah, I consigned, and actually I picked up a couple. I didn't. I bought a couple also in that auction, so it's not like I got just a check. But yeah, I got a couple, and then I checked for a little bit, and some went somewhat better than I would hope, and some went less. But I think all in all, I try not to worry about it too much.
So you know, another thing that scares me is if I have a unit, like I'll give you Classic as a good example. They had an item I was personally interested in. It was a Summit Series puck, their last auction, which ended up going for, after hammer fees, everything around 13,000. That's just something absolutely ridiculous.
Mhm.
Now, if I'm going to consign to an auction house, you certainly don't want to have 2 or 3 of those items in the same auction. Is there any? I mean, I know some of you probably work with Classic. Some of you might have worked with GameWorn auctions, maybe Legendary or any other auction. Is there anything that they do to prevent? I mean, it would be in their best interest to kind of prevent consignment of multiple of the same items. Or have you guys ever had to face something like that before?
In the times I've consigned, you can ask, but a lot of times they'll, they're a little close to the vest on what they got. What they have done is they've sparsed things out, and I've seen Classic do that with the whole collection and the Robitaille that they've had in the past, where they kind of piecemeal some of their stuff out, so it's not all, every single item out at once.
So we're talking about the Brett Hull collection, I guess, is a good example of that, because I was under the impression that the auction they had, the last auction they had, that was his stuff and that was it. As a collector, I mean, if I'm going to be buying that stuff, and for example, he had some of his Stanley Cup game worn jerseys for sale last auction. I believe they were the away jerseys, and then now they got a whole new set of Brett Hull shit, and that's all the Stanley Cup home jerseys. When he actually wore the Stanley Cup and paraded around with the Stanley Cup in the home arena. So as a collector, I would be pissed off not knowing that. But I guess that's just kind of the risk you take when you're buying anything from an auction house, I suppose.
Well, one of the things that I know, at least from my experiences, I haven't gotten the opportunity like Bert to try and consign anything because, like I said before, anything that I buy, I usually buy because I want to keep it. But from a buying aspect, on top of the 20% hammer fee, the other thing that really prevents me from bidding and trying to win things is it can be a lot of different things, actually. Auction format, how the auction runs, the time it ends, and the extended bidding. Technical issues, we'll call them, if you will. The shipping costs.
I know of one auction house that had some technical issues their last auction. We want to touch on that or no?
I mean, we definitely can. There's really a multiple of things that, for me, keep me from being a bidder.
Do you doubt the legitimacy of what they're doing sometimes, Derek?
I try to be impartial when it comes to things like that. But sometimes it really makes you wonder if you follow the rabbit, if you will, things can really start to make sense. I've heard of proxy bidding or shill bidding going on. If something's not maybe being driven the right way, something would happen that causes extended time to go on because they're trying to get more bidders and things like that. Honestly, I try to stay away from auctions as much as possible unless I see that one thing. I think I picked up one item overall, and for me it wasn't exactly the best experience because paying them was incredibly difficult. And then on top of that, you had the 20% and then the high cost of shipping, which I've never paid that much in shipping for a jersey before. It was just incredible.
So just so everyone knows, I just want to interject. Shill bidding is where the auction house will actually bid up the item themselves to represent kind of fake activity on the item. Proxy bidding is where either the seller of the item or a third party will bid up the item in an attempt to spur up interest in the item. So, and those two things do exist. I mean,
They exist. They exist in every format, though.
Definitely.
Oh,
I mean,
right.
eBay's really hard with that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I guess it's another pro and con, right? I mean, you're buying privately through a private seller. You kind of know what the price is, what you're going to get. You're probably not bidding against anyone else. There's no kind of shadiness going on, let's say. Well, perhaps there is, but at least you don't have to worry about those types of things. I mean, in the past, there have been auction houses that have, where the owners of the auction houses have gone to jail. Is anyone familiar with what happened with legendary auctions? I'm not sure if it was under Legendary Auctions the first time this has happened. It might have been a different name, but it was with the same auction house company. Is anyone familiar with that?
I have not heard, no.
I think I've heard some of those stories, but it's pretty vague to me now.
It was regarding a lot of shill bidding going on multiple items by people within the company to drive prices up, tax evasion, selling bogus items. So, and at the end of the day, the only thing that happened is the auction house just simply closes down. They don't go bankrupt. There were a few arrest warrants and there's a little bit of jail time, but at the end of the day, I believe that those people still walked out, doing relatively well for themselves. So for the hobbyist, how do they know they'll be protected? Because I think that's one of the distinctions is that if you're buying from an auction house, you should have some level of protection.
Well, one of the things that I've noticed, I don't know, we actually haven't gotten a chance to talk about it, but NHL auctions, they run their own. One of the things that I do like about the NHL auctions is they are a very similar format to the others, but a lot of it is ran directly through teams and things like that, so you can be pretty certain that the items are legitimate. But one of the things that I like on their bidding structure is you can actually see who's bidding or who you're bidding against, and you can kind of figure out patterns on how different people are bidding, or if you're in a battle with a specific guy. One of the things I like about that too, which I'm sure other auction houses won't, is if I'm bidding on something and you're bidding on something and we kind of know each other's IDs, we can be like, let's not bid each other up, and I'll trade you this if you don't bid me up.
Yeah, that would be nice, because I think I've done that with a few of the people I know, unfortunately,
Yeah, I've done that on NHL as well. Yeah, me and Mark are able to get on the same, like, oh, are you going to bid on that one? Or like, you take that one and I'll take this one. So that's a collusion, if you will. But one of the other things is, does anybody remember the Joss Sports? How it was an authenticator, not necessarily an auction house, or they were kind of like the migrate of the NFL, where they were faking wear on football jerseys.
Is this
I heard
the
about
New
that.
York
Yeah, they
Rangers
were
thing?
stuffing up
Or
the jerseys and
was it the Jets or
It was
Giants?
the Bears.
Bears?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
had Bears,
Okay.
they had Jets, and a couple. I think Vikings too. Yeah.
Yeah, I've read a lot of stuff with things like that in football.
Yeah.
See, football. I mean, I don't know a lot about football game orangers, but is it like a gamer for every game type thing, or do they have a set, or what's the deal with football?
A lot of times it's a gamer. Yeah, it's like one game per.
It depends on the player. Usually it's a high end player will be one per game. An offensive lineman will be one per game. But I've
That
had
is true,
some where
yeah.
have been all season. Where they've
See,
got actual repairs and whatnot.
I've seen the
So
prices for football stuff, football game worn jerseys in comparison to hockey game worn jerseys, and I'm thinking by all rights, the more expensive jersey should be the NFL jersey. The NFL is one of the biggest sporting leagues in the entire world, certainly in North America. Well, I'm not sure where it ranks up there with soccer, but in the United States, anyways, the most successful sporting league in the United States, makes the most money, most fans by far. Why are hockey jerseys just at the end of the day so much more than football jerseys by comparison?
Maybe it's access to them. I think that could play a big part. I mean, for me, I don't really look for football jerseys, but it could be the availability. We know we can get NHL jerseys. We know where they're coming from and things like that. Football may still be in the stages that hockey jerseys were quite some time ago, where people didn't know that they were accessible. So the people who have them are kind of just like, we'll sell them for whatever. At least that's my opinion.
Well, I mean, I could just jump in here too because I used to have a lot of football jerseys, and I basically just sold them off. And I think the thing with football, unless you get like a player that you really like, there's really nothing special about a football jersey. It's just basically a jersey with like numbers on the front, numbers on the back, numbers on the sleeve. Whereas like
They don't really have a
hockey-
lot of wear, do they?
Well, it depends. I mean, if you get like older vintage stuff, I've got some older stuff from the '80s. I mean, it's just beat to hell. But just from an aesthetic standpoint, there's just really nothing cool about a football jersey. Or a hockey jersey, like I may not be a fan of like the team or the player, but it's just a really cool looking jersey. It's got a cool logo. It's something that would be kind of fun to wear around. I think that makes kind of a difference too. Whereas, like I said, football, unless it's a player you really like and you want to have their jersey, I mean, just to have a jersey of just some random player, there's really nothing special about them. They don't really look that cool. I mean, that's obviously I'm biased because I'm a hockey guy, but like I said, I used to have a lot of football jerseys, and I just ended up selling them because there was no attachment. There's really nothing special about them. There's really nothing cool to display about them.
So we touched on shill bidding, we touched on proxy bidding. Is there any worry that as a result of those two practices and a lot of the memorabilia now being a lot of the vintage stuff, the high price stuff being sold through the auction houses, is there any worry that this has kind of inflated the market to false value? Do you guys ever worry about that with your own collections?
For me, I don't really concern myself too much with that because, again, I'm the type of person when I pick something up, it's probably not to sell. And I know people try to gauge the market to figure out what their stuff is worth and things like that. But for me, every jersey is unique. Something could have happened in that jersey that didn't happen to another jersey, or a player wore it for a specific event. So it really comes down to who wants it and how much do they want it pretty much every time for me. I know it's nice to have a baseline, but there's, for me at least, so many factors that can play into what I think a jersey's worth, what I'd be willing to sell it for, or hold on to it, like the types of repairs on it, photo matching, players, milestones. There's so much involved in that. But I can definitely see where you're coming from as far as trying to baseline prices for a jersey that might be similar from an auction house, which, in my opinion, is still an inflated value, like you said.
See, the way the auctions are going right now, personally, it scares the shit out of me because I think that it's kind of like the bubble's got to burst somewhere, you know? And when you're buying through an auction house, you're going to pay a lot of money for what you're buying. And I'm still of the opinion that I wouldn't buy anything unless I had some kind of extreme sentimental attachment. I really wouldn't buy anything that I thought it was really going to lose any kind of money off of. So, I mean, this is not a concern for you guys at all. You know, I mean, maybe it works the other way. Maybe you see something going for in an auction, you have that specific player for the team, maybe it's a different set or what have you, and that raises the value of your own item. Maybe you guys look at it a different way and think that, hey man, the auction houses, and it's fair to say maybe the auction houses are serving to better advertise for the hobby. Maybe they're adding value to things in your own collection. I mean, collectively, what kind of an impact do we think the auction houses have? Is it overall positive for the hobby, or is it a negative one?
I think it depends on your collection. I mean, I'm pretty low end stuff. Like I said, I collect Western Michigan University jerseys, so I mean, there's really not a lot of high end stuff there. So it doesn't impact me. But yeah, if I was buying like higher end jerseys, I'd be like you. I'd be a little worried about what's going on with like I said, you mentioned the bubble bursting. I mean, I'd be feeling the same way.
I think the risk of the bubble bursting is more on the modern jersey than it is the vintage. I think vintage is still underrated and undervalued. I think, if you look at what you could pay for a modern jersey versus what you could still get at that cost vintage, I think vintage is still, and you have the ability of getting more of that back if you ever were to resell as for a vintage shirt as opposed to a modern shirt where as soon as you buy it off the rack, just like a car, it's probably half of what you paid for it.
Well, that's interesting. Where do we draw the line between modern and vintage? Is there a specific? It's different for everyone, I suppose, but I'd like to hear some of the thoughts on what people think is a modern jersey. What year does it start for modern, and what year does it start for vintage?
I think the demarcation line is either 2000 or the start of the migrate program, but it's in that area to me.
And Bert, I was about to say the exact same thing. Is right around 2000 is kind of where you saw, and you know what? I like Migrate. I've done a ton of work with them and hope to continue. But yeah, the vintage ones I had, and I wish I had them now. 99, 2000 St. Louis Blues jerseys. Had some of the clown style jerseys, and those are very hard to find. But you can find any jersey beyond that, especially Migrate up. You can dig those up and dig them up fairly cheap. And it's a lot to do with the amount worn by player and the popularity. Once that kind of stuff took off, teams or groups like this, where they say, hey, the players need to wear this many jerseys a season, or you have all all the extra jerseys made for these guys. It's so much easier to get from a I guess fans' perspective who thinks it's cool to get a game worn jersey. It's nice because they have easy access, but from us being more diehard collectors for getting value and long-term value, or maybe a nice return on it, you're not going to get it with newer stuff. But as far as the value for vintage stuff, 2000 and beyond, I've seen some steals in that, and I think you're right. There is a lot of jerseys in that are very undervalued.
I want to go back to touch on something Derek brought up earlier, which was regarding the fact that these auction houses a lot of the time are not giving you an actual letter of authenticity with the item you buy from the auction house. And I personally, I don't understand. You're going to pay a 20% hammer fee. You're paying everything in American dollars, right? Why? Because I've dealt with an auction house that I've sent items to for authentication that came back as authentic, and then I later had I later purchased an item off the same auction house, and it was completely different. What you get is basically a printing of the listing of the jersey, and that's basically it. Why is it that is it because they're afraid to put their name on what they're selling, or don't want to, put themselves in a hole legally, or what's the reason that you're not getting an LOA with these auction houses?
I don't get why they can't have those, because in most cases, especially the more modern jerseys, unless the people have lost them, which the odds are most people, I have a file that has all mine in them. They're easily gotten to, so if I sell something, I can ship it out. I don't know if they just want to have their own letter and nobody else is attached if there's anything questioned. But like in the case of Migrate, if you're auctioning off one of their jerseys and it's got the set stamp and their code inside, those can easily checked. Send me that certificate with it. I know I can reach out to Migrate and confirm everything, but send it with there. I don't understand why they won't do that.
I think some auction houses basically consider that their LOA.
They're dumb.
You're going to pay $10,000 for a jersey, and they're going to give you a printout of the listing. It's just a slap in the face.
I can't say I agree with it, but I think that's the thinking. I've won a couple things off the Canadian auction houses. I haven't gotten anything other than a receipt. So I think the fact that you get something has been better than what I've gotten in other places. Now, I will say that a lot of times to me, an LOA is overrated. Okay, because I've seen LOAs flat out wrong. My Grays even had some wrong LOAs, and we've known this from our own research. Where they'll have set dates, but let's face it, unless they have a migrate employee in the locker room, these equipment managers, their job is to get these guys back on the ice, not to sit there and say, oh, well, this is set one. Well, they can't wear it past January 15th,
Yeah, that's a great point, yeah.
I mean, LOA is just a piece of the puzzle. And obviously, photo matching brings up another topic, but there's photo matching, there's, doing your own research, whether it's using Hockey Reference, because it will have, not box scores dating way back into the 80s. So I mean, an LOA, I think, and I'll be one to say that I've not necessarily lost LOAs, but I've gotten jerseys that didn't have LOAs that were in the migrate program. So I didn't necessarily wasn't a deal breaker, but you kind of factor all those things into the soup, if you will.
Is there any kind of value in having a historical record of the jersey's sale? And by that I mean, if you're going to sell the jersey down the line, do you want to be able to go and reference, or do you want other people to be able to go and reference the fact that, hey, the jersey was sold at this time and it sold for this amount of money? I mean, as a collector, if I ever to sell my stuff, I mean, on one hand, I can say, yes, it was sold through either Classic or GameWorn auctions. Technically, they should know what they're doing, so it's not like it shouldn't be considered a shady item. But another part of me thinks that, hey, if I want to go ahead and sell this item for 3 times what I paid for it, it might be that might work against me to have a historical record of when the jersey sold or when the item sold and what it was paid for. You guys have any kind of ideas on if you prefer the item to be listed in a historical database? It's viewable to everyone. Some collectors like keeping their stuff completely private. They don't want anyone knowing who owns anything. They don't even want any records of it being on the internet. What are your thoughts on that?
I normally don't have a problem with people knowing what I pay for it, just because I know I'm not going to get as much out of it, or it comes down to the limited access to it. So somebody's going to pay what they think it's worth, or how much is it worth to them. That's what they're going to pay. I know a lot of people don't have that same idea, and I do, or at least I have heard of instances in which people are very secretive about what they have. You always hear about the big jersey deals go down, but they go down behind closed doors. You have an idea of what was sold. You don't know how much. You don't know the exact details. So you might hear about a really big Wayne Gretzky
Derek,
jersey.
you kind of touched on this earlier. It's the whole aspect of openness and lack of disclosure on a lot of this. You like NHL auctions because you can see who's bidding on it, and there's no allegations of shill bidding at NHL auctions. The other auction houses where you can't see what's going on, people assume there is shill bidding. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But the fact that there's no disclosure, no openness, it leads to those allegations. So, and now directly what you're talking about here in terms of where a jersey comes from, we've been trying for weeks to authenticate a specific jersey in one of the auctions now. And I'll read the first sentence. This fresh to the hobby example is part of an exciting collection of newly discovered game-worn hockey jerseys that were originally sourced from, in quotes, New England. That's all we have on the history of this jersey.
It makes it think, doesn't it?
Yeah, and we have a lot of questions about the legitimacy of it because it does not match up. And I know a lot of experts have been looking at this one, and they're all scratching their heads. So it would be, to me, it would be nice to know, where is this from in New England? What is the history of this jersey? Did someone buy this back in the early 90s, stash it away? Right now, we have none of those answers. And I'm staying away from this jersey. It would be a great jersey to have if we could authenticate it at all.
But then you run across the other issue with that is you get people like us that no, we need to go do some research on this. We can lean on other experts in this field and get some more information. Where you get somebody that may be a fan of that player or that team or whatever, and jumps in and say, "Oh my God, there's another one out there. I can't find it anywhere," and buys it and drops a ton of money, and it's totally a BS thing. Where is there any repercussions for the auction house or anything if it gets found out that they totally BS this one?
Yeah, and I don't know, and it's a good. I mean, does that become a haven for these kind of shady jerseys? We've seen examples of auction houses where the jersey was attempted to be sold prior.
I think we lost Marco. We'll try and get him reconnected. Marco, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, you cut out for a minute.
Sorry about that, guys. So
No problem.
I was just saying that do these auction houses now become a haven for these kind of questionable items where people want to remain, they don't want their names out there or anything like that? Because I've seen examples of jerseys or items that were tried to be sold privately, through the forum.
And maybe that does need to happen. Is these auction houses need to be somebody that spends, say, tens of thousands of dollars on a supposed rare jersey and gets taken? You sue the crap out of them, because especially if you find out that they knew it was crap, but the seller and the auction house tried to get rid of it because they couldn't do it any other way.
What is the auction house's position? And we're talking the two major ones. If you find a jersey you bought is not legit,
hey guys,
they stand by.
I've returned items to 4 auction houses and gotten money back on every single one of them. So
wow,
beauty.
Yeah.
Wow.
Some really high end, as high as $1,500. Some as low end as $100, $150. So so I mean, I haven't had a problem with returning anything as long as you come back with some legit reason why you're returning it. If you say I don't like it, on the high end, on that 2 high end items I returned to 2 different auction houses. This was about $1,500 jerseys, both of them. I actually had Migrate look at them. They said they couldn't authenticate them, and I wouldn't have sent it to Migrate if I didn't think they wouldn't authenticate them. I had my own questions, so I just wanted another pair of eyes to look at them. They looked at them. They said they couldn't authenticate them, so I basically took that receipt / letter, and I had a return of funds. So
Do you mind letting us know who the auction houses are? Because I think that's more of a a statement of the quality of the auction house taking the item back, despite the fact that it was maybe kind of misadvertised.
Well, one of them was mirrors.
Yeah.
They don't do a ton in hockey, but they had a lot of stuff that was donated from a museum, and that's where all that came from. And then the other
We're
one
not talking Newport Sports, are we?
Yep, we are.
Oh,
and,
man.
Yeah. Well, some are legit, some weren't.
Yeah, don't get me started on Newport Sports. I got a chance to look at a lot of their stuff, and what they would describe as game worn. It's not, Anyways, a topic for another day. Sorry.
Yeah, and the other one was Leland's. So.
Did any of these jerseys
I
have not seen them resurface. If that was the question.
And you know what? I've bought stuff before and then been contacted by the auction house a good 2 months after money has been cleared, saying, "Oh, we've messed up. We don't have the item, even though it's been sold on their catalog like 1 or 2 different auctions. We can find something comparable." And it's happened to me at least 2-3 times. And they've sat on my money for 2-3 months before getting a hold of me saying, "Oh, we don't have the item." But then you see the auction item, the next roundabout, it's been posted again for sale.
Oh, that's brutal.
I have a similar experience where I did return one. It was a Caps jersey, low end, but they basically had a 9/11 patch. Well, the 9/11 patch for Caps jerseys what we call the fan or arena patch is slightly bigger than the actual patch they use on the jerseys. And it was a legit jersey, but somebody had sewn on the fan patch. So I assume the collector or a fan had bought it, sewn on the patch so it looked like that season's jersey. Well, I said, look, I have 4 of this patch. This is not the right patch, and sent it back. Got my money back, but it was in the next auction anyway.
And probably did not correct the description to say, by the way, this was added. We believe this was added by a fan. This patch is not correct for this jersey.
Nope. You're correct.
And see, that's the kind of crap that gets these auction houses like that a bad name. It's like, if you know what, they stand up and say, we're sorry, and they change the description saying the jersey is legit, but this doesn't match up. This was added by somebody else. Put it out there clearly. You'll get a lot better name, and more people will trust you than trying to just flip it again and make your money on it.
Well, you know what they should have done? They should have just sent it to the seller and said, "Hey, we're not selling this."
That too.
Yeah.
How does the auction house get their money back from the seller? That's the plight of the auction house, right? They take the jersey in, they sell it, they get their money, to give the seller their money, and they'll never hear from that seller again. It's almost a guarantee. So we have to touch on the fact the auction house is taking a large portion of the risk as well.
Isn't there a delay before the sellers get paid?
Well, that brings up a really interesting
I've never
topic.
sold anything through an auction house.
I mean,
it's
how do you guys feel about the policies?
It's pretty quick. I wouldn't say it's not wired to, but it's within a couple weeks.
Well, how do you guys feel about the policies that auction houses have and the format that the different auction houses have? Because I know varying auction houses have differing policies. I know I've seen one that doesn't pay out their sellers until 30 days after. Some of them give you a return policy of, 45 days if you have proof, different things like that.
I thought Classics is 3 years. Is Classics not 3 years? I believe it is.
I'm not as hype on auction houses. Yeah. I don't know.
Regardless, 45 days is not a lot of time to research a vintage jersey properly to completely rule out the fact that it might be a fake. So I think that's a cop out by whatever auction house is only giving you 45 days. That's just not enough time.
I agree. I know the Mears return I had was probably 9 months.
See, that's a reasonable amount of time. For me, 9 months. I had a jersey that was I determined was a fake, and that jersey was from 79-80, and that took must have been 6 months worth of research to completely rule out there was any possibility that it was going to be legit. So from personal experience, if the auction has to give me 45 days, I don't think that's much of a guarantee at all.
Now, what do you guys feel about the actual format of the auctions and how they're run?
One of the things I wanted to touch upon, I guess it would lend itself to talking about the format of the auction, is the 10 p.m. cutoff. I can give you guys a good story of a time where I'm waiting for the auction and I'm having a few drinks. 10 p.m. cutoff happens, and for the love of God, at 2 o'clock in the morning, there's still bids on these items, and by that point, I'm just fucking wasted. And they got me for an extra, I think, $400 on the 2 items. So, I guess it is from my point of view, it was very effective against me. Although I love the items I have now, and I wouldn't trade them for anything. But what do you guys think of 10 p.m. cutoff stuff? Is it bullshit where they run the auctions till 5 o'clock in the morning, or what are your thoughts?
7 p.m. cutoff for us.
7 p.m. cutoff. That's right.
I will say I've been in Japan when 2 major auctions have ended, so it works perfectly for me. So when they end at 3-4 a.m. on the East Coast, that's 3-4 p.m. in Japan. So that's perfect.
Good for us here. So it's honestly, I like the extended bidding. As with most of us, I buy a lot on eBay, and it's it's all sniping. It, and a lot of those jerseys, I mean, if you're the seller, they could go for a lot more in a real auction format. I love the extended bidding at NHL auctions. I like the fact it's per jersey on that, but I understand why the auction houses do it for everything. You fall out on one jersey that you were going to spend $3,000 on, you now have $3,000 to spend. You're going to find something else you're allowed to bid on.
And that's, I hadn't thought about that. That's actually a really good point. I'd never thought about that. There's only ever been one or two items I ever wanted in an auction, but yeah, that's very true.
And I can't remember if it's .net or Classic, but one of them you can see the last bid scrolling by, which is strangely entertaining at 2 a.m.
The hardest part I have with the extended bidding is how long it goes on. I can't sit here until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, my time, to see if I win something. And I wish it kind of put us all on a level playing field at one point in time, where at a certain point you get so many bids, so we're trying to encourage you to put your maximum dollar on here as soon as possible. That way, I don't have to be awake before I go to work to bid, and I'm up all night and now I'm screwed for work. I think that sucks.
The solution to all this is just bid your max, and when you wake up at 6 a.m., that you find out if you got yourself a jersey or not.
You know what? Now, but the paranoid part of me thinks I don't want to bid the max, because is there a chance they know what your max bid is and they bid just underneath it to push you to the max? See, that's why the paranoid piece of me will never allow me to do more than one bid at a time. I can't do it. Are any of you guys have the same feeling on that?
I know
on eBay I would have. That's why you see sniping is rampant there.
Right.
Yeah. On the auction houses, there's times where I've bid a couple hundred over what it went for. And if they wanted the money, it was there. It was there for the taking. Yeah.
Yeah, I find that really funny that you mention that, because I've read of instances where people have bid on multiple things in really obscure amounts, and they've said it was ironic that every single one of their bids got pushed to the highest amount.
Jay, you were going to say something?
It is 2015. Looking at some of the auction websites, I don't know why they can't. It just seems like with the technology available, they could make these crap so much easier. And I know it's money that some of these auction houses would have to invest, but how about some apps for some of this stuff? eBay's app is phenomenal. I love being able to use it if I'm on things. Why couldn't some of these auction houses go that direction? I think you draw even more in. And you talk about you're away from the house, you're having to stay up overnight. It's nice if I'm laying in bed, I can have that sound cranked up and hear the alert for eBay or whatever if I get outbid on that stuff. Maybe that's the direction some of these auction houses should go.
Exactly. Heritage has one too.
I'm in the software business myself for my actual real job, and mobile apps, actually good ones, if you can't develop yourself, are very expensive. So I can see them thinking, and this is a lot of the things that you get in business too, is you become stagnant. So this is working, why change it? Why should I invest more money when there's no proven account that will get more money from it? It's a very significant investment for uncertainty on their aspect. I mean, a mobile app.
I think you would draw in more people, and you might see a lot more people spending money instead of unless they can only do that their computer or their tablet.
A lot of it has changed too. I mean, look at some of the websites that we used to visit for just general hobbying. How long it took them to change from a specific format, and I like to say that on some of that regard, their hand was kind of forced to do that. It took pressure. And I kind of feel like we're in the same boat with auction houses. Nobody's pressuring them to do anything different than they're already doing. So
Well, they
why
get pressure
change
from
beaten
the other
path?
auction houses. There's always pressure to kind of outperform and be the leader. I guess it's not maybe it's not enough pressure, or maybe it just speaks to the fact that there are not enough auction outlets for collectors right now. I mean, are we under the general belief that these places are making a lot of money?
I've heard, I've tried to do the math myself, and obviously I'm not in these companies. I've heard that they struggle to make money, but when you start to see or calculate the dollar getting thrown around, it's hard to believe that. I mean,
See,
I
I've
would
been
love
to
to
I've
open
been
the
to
books.
Classics offices in Montreal. It's not you're not walking into the MGM Grand. It's not and it's not even on a main strip. It's just it's in an industrial area, and you walk into the building. The building's nice, but by no means is it really. If they're making money, they're not showing that they're making a lot of money. Let's put it that way.
But I don't think any of us truly understand the costs associated with the auction.
I think that's a very big part of it.
And I don't know what they are. We complain about the 20% hammer, but we know about it. So when we bid, we should factor that in. Are they making enough to cover their costs and a decent profit? I have no idea. I'd love to get more of an inside look into what they're doing, because I think if there was a huge amount of money to be made there, everyone would be doing it.
Well, and it's the time spent with having to list them, put them online, take the pictures, do all the parts to get it out there and market it, and then they've got to print their catalogs if they're doing it that way, or get their emails out to all their people and say, hey, this is the stuff that's going on. And I think a lot of what that may be is they're hoping they're making their money off the expensive jerseys, the ones that are going to go for a lot of money, and then the lower end ones are their break even or quote unquote lose money ones. But it's to draw people in, as they may see some cheap ones, but oh crap, there's a Brett Hull type jersey that I can pick up, and maybe I'll buy that and make decent money, and maybe it's some of those kind of things.
As a collector, you guys feel, if you're consigning through an auction house, if you have done all of the research yourself, should there be some kind of a kickback, a discount, something along those lines? Because I think a large portion of what they have to invest in is the actual time to authenticate everything. I know these places have extensive records on every team in the hobby, but I mean, still, for you think about the work that some of you guys have done authenticating some of your pieces. Imagine receiving 1,000 pieces for your upcoming auction, and the amount of time that would have to go into authenticating all those items.
I think that's part of the value they're selling, though. That's how they justify a 20%, as opposed to, say me listing a Brett Hull 99 jersey on eBay versus Classic. Classic's going to dwarf what I get on eBay or any other, non-major auction house form, just because they have it coming from and one of the things that I actually had a LOA from the player that I had to return. The player doesn't know that he did or didn't wear that. They just they get a piece of paper signed in front of them and they sign it. Sure, yeah, okay. So I mean that's part of what they're selling. Any auction houses, we've had somebody look at it and yes, it's legit enough for us to put it in our upcoming auction, as opposed to we've all seen the deals that people have gotten off eBay or at the Goodwill or some secondhand store where you have to do your own research and do your own legitimacy and provenance of a shirt.
Do we have enough time to touch upon individual items right now that we find interesting in the current Classic and GameWorn auctions lineup? Or
yeah, we got about 5 minutes left before we get cut off.
So curious to hear what's piquing everyone's interest that's currently out there right now.
I'm a Wings collector, so the only thing that caught my eye was Steve Eisman. Just saying.
That Brett Hull Wings jersey that's on Classic right now is the hottest item right now. It's got 15 bids.
I saw a cheap one because that's kind of the path I'm currently on with stuff. And there's actually in classics I think it's 98.99 Terry Yake jersey from the Blues. One of the reasons I like that is one, it's super cheap, and two, I've got to know him through doing fantasy camps and stuff down there in St. Louis.
So what you're saying is I should bid on that.
Go for it.
Yeah, I'm not naming
If
any of
you're-
the shit that I'm personally interested in. I'm going to name the stuff I find interesting.
Derek, if you buy it, I'll pay for it.
Oh, killing me. Paul, you see anything you like?
There's a few wings I'm looking at in the, especially the classic one. There's one I was interested in .net, which I've decided to pass on bidding. That was the Aaron Ward with the Vladdy patch. So I hope Tim, if he's listening, Tim, I hope you win that one.
Yeah, the hard part for me on these auctions is anything that I would buy, I can't right now just because I'm strapped for cash from some of the previous items I bought, and the Red Wing sale's coming up soon.
The Barilko Leafs for me on Classic, I mean, that's an amazing. I don't know how they keep photo matching these jerseys from the 50s, but my God, that's a very special item. And also the I'm the only Canadian here, so the 72 Summit Series Gary Bergman actual like gloves from the Summit Series, because I've never seen an actual piece of equipment other than a stick sold from the Summit Series, so I think that's going to get mega bucks, way more than I'd be willing to pay for it.
Isn't that crazy already?
It's at the Barilko jersey.
No, the gloves.
The gloves are at it's the gloves and the equipment bag, and that's at $862.
Oh,
I think
wow.
I think that'll probably fetch around
Damn.
$3,000.
I'm sure you're right.
That Summit Series stuff. It's the same as the Miracle on Ice stuff, right? It's the equivalent for the Americans is the Miracle on Ice, right? So we've all seen what the crazy amount of dollars people spend on those items. So yeah, I'd expect that's going to go for quite a lot of money.
It seems every year though there's a Summit and or a Miracle on Ice item though.
That no one's ever seen before.
Yeah, it's like for the last I don't want to say 4 or 5 years where we've seen the Henderson and then the stuff from the Miracle on Ice. It just seems like every year there's the Ken Morrow and then all that stuff came out. So it just seems like once a year, like it's kind of slowly leaking out that the players or their families are selling these.
And no one on this call has one item from either of those two events. And all of us would love to have some of them.
And that's the thing. For me, I know I've done a little bit of research on this. I would classify that stuff as a cross collectible, something that you don't even have to be a hockey fan to collect that stuff. As long as you're patriotic, you kind of want to have that stuff, and that's why I think the value on those items in particular is it always just seems to stay so high.
I don't think collectors even bid on those items. Those seem to be corporations and things like that. That when they get to those super high values, it's not even collectors anymore. It's worth collecting.
The Henderson jersey, the one that sold for $1.25 million, that one went to the owner of Loblaws, which is a grocery chain, a huge grocery chain. I'm not sure if you have it in the States, but a huge grocery chain in Canada. So you're right to say that it does get outside of the realm of, I guess, the everyday collector, and it goes into just the hands of a bunch of millionaires. Really, at the end of the day, it's just crazy.
Well, guys, it looks like that's going to be time for us. I want to thank everybody for joining us. I really had a good time with this, and I think we still have a lot of material that we can continue this for next week's episode, so hopefully we can have a lot of you back.
Yeah, I had a great time. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it as always.
Sounds good.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you, Derek, and everyone.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you guys next week. I'm Derek. That was GameWorn Radio. I hope you guys listening had a really good time, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.